Hi, this is Henning from FlippedNormals.com, and in today's video we are going to be covering how to use TopoGun 3. TopoGun 3.0 was just released and it's an incredible retopology software. If you're not sure what TopoGun is, it's essentially the only topology tool that's fully standalone and works only with topology. It's exclusively a retopology tool. It doesn't try to be anything it's not. It's just a fantastic retopo tool that's pretty cheap compared to a lot of other solutions. It's currently $150. I bought my TopoGun 2 license back in 2011 and it was just a $30 upgrade fee to upgrade for that. So it's a very generous license model, which is fantastic and attainable. If you're working with something like Blender or Cinema 4D or maybe Houdini or something that doesn't have amazing retopo tools, TopoGun is a brilliant tool. Even if you come from Maya, it's still a very, very good retopo tool. So if you're not a TopoGun user, feel free to still check out this video because it's going to really help you with seeing what TopoGun is all about. And if you are a TopoGun user and you might have been using TopoGun 2, then check this out for a lot of cool updates. Now, this video is also not sponsored by TopoGun themselves. We just like their products. Before we get into the video as well, make sure to check out FlippedNormals.com if you're looking for really cool training and resources like this Introduction to Anatomy course, where you learn everything there is to know about anatomy for beginning artists or people who just want to do a proper refresher on the anatomy, covering everything from A to Z when it comes to anatomy. Link in the description to this. This is what TopoGun looks like if you don't have a scene set up. So the very first thing we have to do is we need to import our high poly model for retopology. You can very easily do this by going to File and Load Reference Mesh. A reference mesh is going to be the high poly and a regular mesh is going to be the topology you're actually creating within TopoGun. So click on this one. Then I'm going to be loading my model. We just have to give this a few seconds to load. The amazing thing about TopoGun is that it uses the GPU for caching the reference mesh, which means that the performance is actually insane. I tested this before the video with an 18 million poly object. It was, of course, a pain to export and to actually import into TopoGun. But once it was there, performance was butter smooth. This object here is, I think, 4 million polygons, and it's just subdivision level 5 from ZBrush. So performance is incredible in TopoGun. It can do one thing, and it can do one thing incredibly well, and that is topology. Now, the first thing we need to talk about is navigation. You can also see the hotkeys we're using up here in the top left. To rotate, you use Alt and left mouse button. If you want to pan, you use Alt and middle mouse button. And if you want to zoom, you use the scroll wheel, or you use Alt and right mouse button. This is also exactly how you navigate in Maya. You can also frame the selection by hitting the F key, or you can show everything by hitting the A key. If the interface also disappears, you can hit the Tab key to bring that back, or in case you want it to go away, you can also just hit the Tab key. This is just an expert mode that in most cases, once you've been getting used to TopoGun, you can probably work in expert mode, just allowing you to have a bit more screen real estate. And if you completely mess up the interface, you start to drag things around and you have no idea where anything is, then you can go to Edit and Reset UI. And this is going to reset the interface to something that you are familiar with. Now that we've loaded in our high poly, you can see our mesh over here. So you can make this invisible or visible, and you can rename this as well. You can call this high poly ref, or whatever you prefer. In order for us to start retopologizing now, we need to create a mesh. We do that by hitting this nice friendly plus icon here, and this creates a mesh right here. So we can just rename this to Topo. I sometimes prefer to use capitals just because it's a bit easier to see and the text can be a bit small. Now, we have a lot of different tools here to the left. We're not going to be covering every single one of them, but we are going to be covering the most useful one. As a heads up, you also really want to be sure that you have your tool options enabled here because this is going to give you a lot more variety in what you can do. If you're not seeing the tool options, you just have to go all the way to the top right, click on this guy here, or go to View and enable tool options right here. What's cool as well is you can also just dock this to the left if you prefer this like so. I just prefer to keep this right here floating. The first tool we are going to be talking about is going to be the Create tool that you can find right here. The hotkey for this is C. So hit C to get to that tool. What this allows you to do is just create points. And each point is going to have a line through it. And this is the most basic version of a retopology tool you can possibly have. And you should get very familiar with this because this is the tool you are going to be spending the majority of your time with. And that is as far as we're going to be taking the create tool for now, because we need to talk about the edit tool first. These two go very hand in hand. So hand in hand, in fact, that if you right click, you can see you swap between these two. The create tool is right here and the edit tool is right here. And the hotkey is just C for create and E for edit, or just right click. Very, very easy. So with the edit tool enabled, we can now start to edit this. This is really more of a tweak tool than anything else. This is where you can start to move things around like so, and it's a very powerful tool. So now we can just start to move this into place. You can see here that we also have a few options. Under here, we have verts, edges, and faces. And you can access these by hitting 1, 2, and 3. So now we can select only the verts. Now we can select only the edges, and now we can select only the faces. There aren't any, we'll get to that. You can also enable multiple of them by shift clicking on it like so, or you can just shift and 1, 2, and 3. So now you can see all 3 are enabled or none are enabled. So let's just enable vertices, and then we will go back to our create tool. And we are just going to be creating some topology. What we're going to be doing now is we are just going to be drawing out some topology from here. And this is dead simple. And sometimes you just have to move from here to over here. And if you do that, you see that you get a triangle. You don't want that in this case. What you can then do, right click, and then you can just right click again. So you kind of double tap right click a lot. So you're going to be doing that a lot. So we can also just do this just to drag this kind of stuff out like so. And then you can start to just get topology in place. And there are definitely more effective ways of retopologizing than the way I'm currently doing it, but this is the gist of it. You could, in theory, only use the edit and the create tool to do this. Your fingers would get very sore because this is a lot of manual clicking, but this is the gist of it. This is how it works in a large way. And to do that, I'm just going to quickly be using the patches tool. Don't worry about what I'm doing now. I will explain everything momentarily, at least a bit later on. You can find the timestamps in the description for specifically the different tools. So just look for the patches tool if you want to just skip to that. So with the edit tool, you can of course just move things around like in a normal sense like this, but you can also modify the topology as well, which is incredibly powerful. The first thing we're going to be looking at is, if we zoom in a little bit now, is we can merge verts together with this tool. So if you just move this over like so, you can see nothing happens. But if you hold on the control key, you can see that this vert here is going to turn red. And this means that this vert is going to be merged to this vert. And this is a fantastic tool. You're going to be using this all the time, since you simply just need to merge a lot of verts when you're doing any kind of cleanup or just retopology in general. But it's not just limited to merging verts. We can also add edge loops and collapse edges as well. The command for all of these different things is going to be shift and middle mouse button. This takes a little bit of time to get used to, but once you're used to it, it's fairly intuitive. So hit the 2 key to go into edges. And then if you hover over an edge, you can see here now that we are in the center of it, it's going to have an R next to it. And then once we get to the border of it, it's going to switch to an L. What this means is ring and loop. So loop refers to edge loop. So if you double click it now, you're going to see that we have indeed selected an edge loop. And if we double tap where it says R, you are going to be selecting the edge ring. Both are really useful. The way we add edge loops is by first selecting the ring and then hover over to the side here. We see the L and then shift and middle mouse button. And now you can see that we can now insert an edge loop. If you select the ring, on the other hand, and then you shift middle mouse button, you can see that you collapse this ring instead. And if you hover over a single edge like this and shift middle mouse button, you're going to be collapsing this as well. Instead of the whole loop, you're just collapsing this single edge instead. So this is incredibly useful. And now you can just go over here, for instance, with the vert mode enabled, drag this over, and then just connect these two up, or merge these two rather. You can also very easily delete the loop simply by double-clicking on the loop you want to delete and then shift the middle mouse button on the R of this loop. This is going to just blitz this loop into oblivion. So there we go, no more loops. And again, if you want to add more loops, just simply double tap the R to select the ring, then shift middle mouse button, and then just go in here and you can just keep adding loops this way. Now, if you want to delete something, you can go into vertices. And then we just select the vert we want to delete, and then this is going to delete this. You can do the same thing for faces as well, where this is going to delete the face, but please note that when you delete the face, it does not delete the verts or the edges around it. So you probably will have to go in and just delete the verts you actually want in order to delete the faces as well. The next tool is the Draw tool, which you can access with the hotkey D. You can find this right here. The Draw tool is one of those tools that looks really fancy in tech demos, but I don't find to be particularly practical. As the name implies, you can now indeed draw the topology. One of the reasons I don't find this to be practical is because I just like to control this a little bit more, and I don't find that I have a lot of control, particularly with a mouse when I'm retopologizing then, or even with a tablet, that I just prefer to have additional control. You get a vert for every intersection line. So this should kind of make sense where you get the verts. You're going to have 9 polygons now. Hit enter or create geometry, and now you're going to get topology this way. I find that sometimes this tool is a little bit buggy and it doesn't give me topology everywhere. And that's also one of the reasons I don't really prefer to use this. And I find that the patches tool down here is a much more superior version to this. Then you can hit clear all, and now you have some nice topology, which you can go in here with the edit tool and just move this stuff around. The next tool is the bridge tool, and this is one of the most useful tools ever made in Retopology. This is a fantastic tool. We have 4 modes for it. The first mode is edges, and this means that you can bridge edges together. In order to do that, we need some more topology. So we can just add some topology here. Click here on the bridge icon, or we can hit Shift and B, and then we can just start to bridge this together like so. This is an incredibly useful tool. You can also see here that you can just drag as well, and this is going to automatically create topology between these 2 edges. So the bridge tool in the edging mode is one of the tools you're going to be using all the time. It does have a face mode as well, but I don't find this to be particularly useful because you often get issues like this. Even if you click, I still sometimes get weird issues, but then also just I prefer to deal with edges. My method when retopologizing, my whole methodology is slow is fast. If you're controlling low poly edges, it gets a lot easier to add a resolution and such to it. So anything that just speeds this up isn't necessarily a plus for me. Then we have freehand lines. This is also one of the coolest tools in TopoGun. By hovering over an area here, you can see there's a line from the red dot here out, and this is going to create topology. This is insanely useful. So you can very quickly just create additional topology here. But not just that, but you can control where it goes. So you can very easily redirect where this topology is actually going. So it's also just a fantastic way to add resolution to an object like this, or just add additional topology. We have straight lines as well. I don't personally use this a lot because I'm not really a hard surface artist, but if you are, this is invaluable because this just creates straight lines. This can also be helpful for organic materials as well, but in general I find this to be more useful for hard surface stuff. And if you are doing that, this is amazing. Bridge tool, Shift and B. Interface wise, one thing I forgot to mention is if you hit the space bar, you get this nice little menu. This is a radial menu that you can use to show the toolbar. You can do all sorts of stuff with this. You can go under select and change different things here. You can go under modify. We're not really going to be using this menu. Personally, I don't really like to use this one. This is just a pure UX thing for me. I love to use this similar thing in Maya, but I find this here to be a little bit too twitchy. So it gets a little bit hard to work with for me. But if you are the kind of person who loves to work with radial menus, check out the spacebar. Tons of cool stuff here. I sometimes use this to switch between these modes where it's context sensitive. So you can now hit spacebar. You can go to edge mode and it's going to switch it to edge mode. You can go up here to lines and straight and it's going to switch it to that. So this kind of stuff gets fairly intuitive once you get used to it, because you can just go straight up here and it just switches to edges, or you can just switch it to something else. So it takes a bit of practice, but the spacebar has a lot of power. Then we have the tubes tool. And in order to use the tubes tool, we need to actually get an additional mesh because this model here is not particularly suited for this. So file, load reference. And here is our anatomy man. This is a final result from the Intro to Anatomy course we spoke about earlier. We can just hide this, and then we're going to be making a new mesh right here. And the tubes tool is fantastic at basically one specific thing, creating tubes. So if you're doing arms like this, for instance, or maybe legs or even better, you can just drag lines here, and this is going to just create topology for this. Now, be aware this tool here is a little bit buggy. What happens if you undo? It undoes the whole thing, and we have to even make the mesh again. So I find this to be useful, but you have to be very careful about using this tool as well, because you might mess this up. So we can just drag this out like so, and you see where the line is. This dictates essentially the twist of it. So this is all going to be fairly consistent. Then we hit the enter key. And this is what we have. And this is really fast. This is a real pain to do if you don't have something like a tubes tool. Often what I've done before is I made a traditional cylinder in something like Maya and just warped it to this one, and this is so much faster. So the tubes tool is really, really awesome. But some limitations to it can also be that because of the bugginess and it being a little bit weird to work with, let's say you're doing this here, you're doing this here, and you're doing this here, and you realize, oh crap, it's actually twisting a little bit, then it's a bit hard to edit this. Like you can't really undo it, right? You can go in here and you can delete last and such, but you can't really use the undo feature. So it's a little bit awkward to work with, in my personal opinion. That's also just a little bit personal preference. You can also hold down the control key and change the divisions right here as well. So if you want more divisions, you can do that. You can hover over anywhere to do this as well. And then you again just hit the enter key and boom, we have some very nice topology. Something to note with this one as well is that you really have to be careful about the order of things. You have to start up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is going to work. But if you undo this now and we do 1, 2, 3, 4, this is going to go crazy. So check this out, because the order of things is important. It really doesn't just look at the actual pattern. It looks at 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to just bridge these two together. It's not a smart tool in that regard. And going back to our guide, the next tool we are talking about is going to be the brush tool. The brush tool is really useful. You're going to be using this a fair bit. This is pretty standard brush, to be honest. There's nothing too crazy here. You have a few settings though over here where you can change the size. Then we can just move this around. We can change the fall off and we can change the strength. Oftentimes you want the strength to be 1-to-1 so that this actually moves 1-to-1 with what you're doing. You can also hold down the shift key and smooth this like you can in most software. And you can just change the strength up and down. You can also change the brush size with control right mouse button like this. You can change this up and down, and control middle mouse button to change the strength. You can see this is changing now. So this is a very handy way of working with this. This also works with a tablet, so there's pen pressure with this tool, which is really handy. So often how you retopologize is that you just get a lot of resolution down and then you realize that it's way too noisy and you just have to go through and soften it. Then this is a fantastic relax brush. We can also keep the border in case you don't want to mess it up. Now you can see that if we just make the size big and make this super intense, you can see that no matter what, it's not going to move the actual border, which is very useful in a lot of cases where keeping the border is essential. The next tool we're going to be talking about is going to be this slice tool with this nice friendly pizza icon right here. This is a very simple tool, but very powerful. This is just going to slice what you are selecting. In this case here, it's just going through here and just slicing this. If you enable extended slice, it's going to just, well, do an extended slice. It's just going to slice through absolutely everything you're seeing here. So quite useful in some cases. For characters, I don't find this to be useful at all, to be perfectly honest, since I like to really control my loops, but this can be quite useful in some cases. And relating to the slice tool, we have the cut tool, and the hotkey for this is Control Shift and C. So this is right here, and this is a very useful tool. This allows you to straight up just cut through the geometry. This is similar to the cut tool in Blender or the multi-cut tool in Maya. Something to note is that TopoGun doesn't really support endguns, so whenever you create an endgun like this, it's going to just remove the topology here. So this is a very nice and simple tool. It just simply allows you to draw a line from one point to the other, and it's going to cut through it. It's really cool that it actually allows you to cut through the whole thing as well. Similar to the slice tool in that regard, just that I find I have a bit more control with this tool. Next up, we have the circle tool. The circle tool is really useful for a lot of different things, and as the name implies, it's going to create a circle, and that's kind of it. The cool thing is that this is in screen space for the moment until we actually apply it by hitting create geometry or enter. So now we can just move this up. You can see here on my scope, this guy used to have horns, which I removed due to design reasons, but he used to have horns. If I need topology around this, I can just very easily do this and then just hit enter, and now we have some nice base for these horns. What you can do as well, you can drag this out and you can hold down a control key and you can start to just scroll here, and this is going to just change the amount of divisions here. And if you hold on Shift and middle mouse button, this is now going to change the steps. So you can create something very low res or very high res very quickly using this. So very useful stuff. This is fantastic for hard surface, but even for certain things, organic things as well. I use this for ears as well. If you want to do something like this, you obviously have to delete the middle part, because when you start to do this, this goes a little bit haywire, but it looks fine here. And then you rotate it and it's like, right, not so fine, but still pretty useful, because now you can, for instance, go in here with the edit tool and you can just start to move these guys around here like so, and then you at least have a base for it. Then you just delete the middle parts of the ear, and now you have a loop going around the ear. You could probably do the same thing for an eye as well, depending on the design of the eye. So now what you can do in order to delete this, you can hit the center one, then we can go to select, grow selection, and then you say grow selection, and then hit delete, and ta-da, there we go. And we now have a basis for an ear that we can use. Is this a recommended workflow? I don't know. Do what you want to do. This is one way of doing it. Next up, we are going to be talking about the patch tool, which is by far one of the coolest tools made inside of the world of Retopology in recent years. The way it works is very simple. We simply just drag out a line like so. Then from the edge here, you see we have this cyan dot. It turns red when you're hovering over it. You drag this out like so, and you do the same thing here, and you just close this. Now you see we have 4 elements. If you hover over these ones here, they turn red, and we now have topology inside of it. The cool thing about this is that this is an actual mix between auto retopology and manual topology. In this case, this just looks manual, but see what happens when I hover over an edge and control and right mouse button. But see what happens when I hover over an element here, one of the red ones, and control and scroll. Now you can see that this actually changes dynamically, and this is incredibly useful. So oftentimes you want this just to stay the same like this, but like have the same amount of spans, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just want something wacky happening, and this just intelligently figures it out. Hit the enter key to create real topology. Now, one of the most useful parts about this tool is that it actually can connect to existing geo, and the way you do this is you go from 1, then you go to the last one you want to connect it to, and now you can see the whole strip is enabled. Now you go up here, and go down here like so, and now boom, we have this. You can also change default divisions as well, just by going down here. If you maybe want this to be a bit more low res, you can very easily do that. Now you see we have 3 divisions, which is just 1, 2, and 3. You see the verts. So now we have a far more low poly version. This is one of these tools that is easy to mistake for a gimmick. Like the draw tool, for instance, I find to be kind of a gimmick. It's cool, but it's not particularly handy. But this tool here is genuinely useful. When retopologizing characters, I tend to go entirely manual for the entire face, simply because this just needs a lot of care and attention. But this region right here, for instance, the head, the back of the head, this is entirely generic. There's nothing too fancy going on here. So going through here and just doing stuff by hand like this and going through and adding loops like this feels honestly like a bit of a waste of time. So I prefer to just fill this kind of stuff in, not with auto retopology, because that's always a mess, but with specifically something like the patch tool. That's fantastic. So if you want to delete everything as well, you can just go to Verts, hit the 1 key, hit Control A, and then you just hit delete, and this deletes everything. So the way I prefer to use this tool is straight up to fill in areas like this. So we can just fill this in here. It's too low res now for me, but that is fine, because remember we have our little trick. So we just fill this in like so, and then we just add some more resolution to all of these ones here. You can also see it's what it's set to here, so we can just make sure it's the same amount. So there we go. Now we have a nice little patch like so. And then we can just hit the enter key, and boom, we just filled in this whole side. So it doesn't really take too much time to do this. But this is just one side of the tool. There's another feature that's insanely useful when it comes to the patch tool. And that is if we enable loft mode right here. So patch loft mode. What this allows us to do is, instead of having to draw all the 4 corners of it, we just draw 1 line and 1 line and 1 line. And this is just going to allow us to very quickly create coverage like so. Insanely useful. So hit the enter key, and there we go. Now you can start to go in and you can start to modify this to your heart's content. Now, a disadvantage with this method of doing it is that if you keep doing a lot of these, you can see each one of these becomes its own section. So if you want to change the segment now, you have to go in here, change it here, change it here, change it here, and change it here, and we have to change it on top as well. And it's really easy to mess this up, and then you get like weird topology and such. I might even messed it up here. So yeah, missed one and missed one and missed one, so now we get a triangle instead. But this is still a brilliant tool. So hit Enter key, and there we go. What you can also do, you can just create one here, and then you can create one here, and it's just going to fill in the whole thing. And then obviously there's a lot less to fix if you need to do this. You can set this to 3 here, make sure this is set, or 2 here, and we can just reduce this to a certain amount. I kind of just eyeball this. You could, of course, just look at this in a more mathematical manner, but, you know, I'm not going to do that. So now you have really quick topology. This is one of the key reasons I really like TopoGun. A lot of the other tools, they exist in something like the quarter tool in Maya or something like that, which I've been using for years. But this is an actual new way of retopologizing for me, which is fantastic. And now if you want to connect this as well, we just go here, duk to duk, and now you can see it's enabled. And then we just go down here, and there we go, boom. And then we can just go down here, we can just change the segments. So Control and middle mouse button, or the scroll wheel rather, and there we go, and boom. So I'm just super excited about this one here. I could keep doing this forever, and I have. I've been doing a lot of retopology in my life. Next up, let's talk about symmetry. Like in a lot of other topology solutions out there, symmetry isn't actually that great. If you're working with symmetry, like actually active symmetry, you are going to find this breaks quite commonly. So a very common workflow is to simply make one side and then mirror it over once you are done. This is a very tested method and keeps it light on the system, meaning there are less polygons to work with, and it's a little bit easier to visualize what's going on. So the workflow for this is really that you just create one side and then you just go for the other side afterwards. I prefer to create a center line before I get started with this, simply because I just have a lot of control this way, and I make sure that I'm staying within my lane so that I'm not crossing the boundary with this. So what you can do now is you can select all of these guys here, and then you can go to Inspector, Modify, and then here we have Symmetry, and you can hit 0 snap. This is very simple. It just scales it down on the x-axis. Nothing fancy with this. But now you can reliably keep working on this one here now, and you can just keep retopologizing. Now, you will still have to go through here and just go in and hit 0 snap and just to create the topology like so. But it's at least a big improvement over having to kind of like fiddle around with this by hand. Now we can just go through here and add some topology here, and I'm just going to show you how we would work with this, and just to add some quick geometry to this. So we're just going to be adding a little bit of geo with this to this one here, just so we can actually mirror this over. So I'm just going to be using the freehand lines just to add some topology here, and same thing with this as well. And just going down here with the edit tool, adding it to some topology here, and we can just click here. There are so many ways to add topology in TopoGun. There isn't like a right or a wrong way of doing it. This depends so much on your specific circumstance and on exactly what you want to do, and honestly just on your own personal preference. There's not really a right or wrong way of doing it. Now let's say this is our final model and we want to mirror this over. Hit Control and A, and now we simply just go under Inspector, Modify, and Create, and now this is going to create symmetry for us. Now I only do this at the end. I really don't trust this for actual symmetry because it's just been breaking time and time again. So if you want that, just create half and then hit Create, and there we go. What you can do as well, you can also flip this as well. This is quite useful. So if you just want to see what this looks like on the other side, you can just hit flip. Now, for a few extra bonus tips, here is a character that's almost done. In this case, I have mirrored him over, and let's say we want to remove the mirroring now. What we can do, we can change this to the front view. You can change this in the top right, perspective, front, go to vertices, make sure that back faces are enabled, and then we just drag a selection over here, make sure you're only selecting stuff on the screen left, hit delete, and now we have deleted this, go back to perspective, and there we go. Now, a problem with retopologizing sometimes is that you get shapes like this. Ears are very annoying to work with, and if you start to retopologize this, it's just going to be hard to see because you're going to have the topology behind the ear, you have the ear, and you're going to have the stuff you can actually be adding behind the ear as well. So instead of modeling this in the same mesh, we can create another mesh very easily. So we can just call this ear just as a temporary thing, and then we can just start to retopologize this, right? You know, keeping this simple and just going in like so, and just adding the loops we want. We can switch just to the bridge tool, and we can just add some very quick topology here. You can see how powerful this is, right? And I'm not going to take this too much further. This is just a quick example, but we can even, in this case here, use the patches tool just with loft enabled and just a very low span. Actually, 2 is plenty. We can just do this, this, and this, and this. In this case, it's actually too much with 2, so we just want 1 here. So I'm just going to make sure that we can set this to 1, which is very easy to do. So there we go. We now have this selected here. So now we have some nice geometry to work with. So let's say that we're done with the ear. We're not, but let's say we're done with the ear, and we want to make sure we get these two combined, because obviously we have to. We can't export this out, or we don't want to export this out and then combine it in Maya. That's a bit silly. So there are 2 main ways of doing this. The first one is going to be to go to Mesh and then Merge Visible, or Control-Shift-M. What this is going to do is it's going to hide both the previous ones, and then it's going to merge them into a new one. So now you can see we have this right here, and this is going to allow us to, well, continue to work on this, and we can start to now connect it up. Basically, it's one mesh. I think this is a little bit cumbersome because it creates a new one and hides the other one, and I just have to do a little bit of management here. What you can do instead is you can enable both of these ones, go to the one you want, go to the mesh you want, hit Control-A, Control-X to cut, go to this one, and Control-V. You can also do this under Mesh, cut geometry, and then paste geometry. Basically, this is standard Windows hotkey. Control-C, Control-V, and Control-X for this. This works exactly the same way. So now we have this combined into one, and we didn't have to create anything new. So cut and paste is very, very useful. Now, just as a few last tips, you can see here in the bottom, you can see the stats. You can see exactly how many vertices, edges, and faces and triangles we have. And if you want to change the display of certain meshes, for instance, if you want to change the display of the reference mesh, you can go under here, just click on the reference mesh. In this case, we haven't named this correctly. And we can change contour, we can change bounding box, so you can see and unsee the bounding box. In this case, there's no reason to have the bounding box. Vertex colors, we don't have any of that. Smooth shade. So now you can see that, this comes from ZBrush. It's gonna not smooth shade it. You can see the model, and you can also see the wireframe. You want to be sure that you never, ever have wireframe enabled because that's going to be impossible to look at. And now, once you are done with your entire model, you click on the model you want, then you right-click on it, you hit export. You can now export this out, call this export, and we just leave this right here. Go to export to. And then in something like Blender or Maya, it really doesn't matter. We can just import this one here. And now you can see that we do indeed have our model. And you can, of course, keep editing this guy here. Sometimes you have to for things like the ears and the mouth and such. I always prefer to keep editing this in something like Blender. It really doesn't matter which software. But the reason is because when we sculpt this kind of stuff, we haven't really created the inner pockets like this. So you can, of course, try to do something like that in Retopology, but I just prefer to do this in a regular 3D modeling software because I have a lot more control over this here. So just extrude, whatever. This is not a tutorial about that, but this is just a little tip at the end as well that you do usually want to continue with this. Now, once you've done this, once you've done your changes, you can also export this back out of Blender and import this back into TopoGun. So just go to File, Export from Blender. And now back in TopoGun, we can go to File, we can hit Load Mesh, and now we can do the from Blender. And if we just hide these two, you can now see that we have our mesh from Blender. And this is a reason I prefer to do this kind of stuff in Blender or Maya or anything like that, because in this case, this is gonna, the moment you start to snap this, right, this is going to snap to the surface and it's no longer gonna work, particularly for its mouth, because in this case, it doesn't actually have a mouth. So we would have to model this properly in as a mouth bag. And then of course, do the reprojection and such in ZBrush later on. So that's it for our introduction to TopoGun. I really hope this was useful and that you find TopoGun to be as fun and helpful to your retopology process as I do. It would be amazing if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel and to click that little notification bell to get updated every single time we put out a new video. And be sure to check out FlippedNormals.com for amazing tutorials, 3D models, and general resources you'll need as a 3D artist. See you in the next video.